Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone Retro Review. Today it is Season 1, Episode 5, Walking Distance. Once again written by Rod Serling and starring Gig Young as Martin Sloan. This episode, first of all, let me just say, besides having a great Bernard Herrmann score, which is a highlight of the episode, is considered by many people to be the first really great all-time episode of Twilight Zone. And while in some ways I agree, there's a few things to me that put it in the very good but not great category, which I'll get to as I go through this review. So, it turns out that the episode starts with Martin Sloan stopping at a service station and getting his car tuned up. So when the station attendant tells him that it will take about an hour or so, he notices a sign to Homewood, the place he used to live in growing up. And he decides he'll take a walk over there as he's reminiscing about the place where he grew up as a child, where he spent his childhood. And he comes across a diner where he talks to the man behind the counter about how he used to live there, and he always used to order a soda with 3 scoops of ice cream. And so he basically gets around to doing the same thing. And when the man only charges him 10 cents, the same price it used to be years ago, we realize he's gone back into time. Now, before I go any further, let me just quickly say, everybody watching this is probably thinking, oh, going back into time, that's been done a lot on TV and film, going back in time, forward in time, playing with time travel. What you have to really remember is that at this time, when Twilight Zone was on, things like this had been done a little bit, but it was still something that people didn't see all the time as a concept. You have to understand with Twilight Zone that some of these things were really somewhat groundbreaking in the way they were presented. That said, I mostly like what's done, but I have a few issues here and there, which I will get into. So the episode keeps going, and he talks to a small child, and he basically reminisces. He goes to the park, he goes around town, talks to some of the townspeople, and he's not 100% sure yet that he's back in time. And then he hears the name Martin Sloan, and he decides to go visit his parents. Of course, when he sees them, he recognizes them, but they don't believe that he's him, even though he obviously knows he's Martin Sloan. So I do like the way this is done, how he can see himself as a child, and he knows everyone there, but they don't know him. That's a very common time travel concept. So then, after this, we get this mid-episode narration, which is one of my problems with the episode, where Rod Serling basically explains to us that he's gone back in time. Now, I realize this wasn't as familiar to the audience back then, but this just comes across as unnecessary. Do we really need him to tell us this? This is odd. Rod Serling didn't usually do mid-episode narration, and this just comes across as strange to me and doesn't really work. So then, the episode continues, the second half of the episode, and he talks to his father again, and his mother, and tries to convince them that he's their son. And this scene is very overdramatic, in my opinion. I realize that times were different, but the mother slaps him. She's a little too hysterical for me, pretty unlikable, actually. The father's a little better, but just the way this scene is handled isn't really great. Others may have a different viewpoint. I found it to be a little over the top. So then he decides to go talk to himself. How he just comes to the conclusion he has to talk to himself, I have no idea. There's a lot of strange thought process in this episode as far as how characters act and react. I'm not sure if they were just trying to fit everything into a half-hour format and some things were cut out, but the way this episode's edited together at times is a little shaky, but it works overall. So then he talks to himself, and he's on a merry-go-round. And of course, the kid part of himself gets scared, and he falls. And it turns out that he now limps. And of course what this means is that the older Martin Sloan will now also have a limp, which is easily the best part of the episode, and it's brilliant because it shows that his actions now have actually altered his own future, which is a concept that many things would borrow from. This was way ahead of its time, so plus points on that point. Now, it comes around again where his father comes up to him, tells him the boy will be okay, but he'll always limp. And then his father talks with him about how he now believes who he is, but he must leave because there's only room for one Martin Sloan there, and he doesn't want to take away from the child by having the adult there. This is another common trope of fantasy time travel, science fiction time travel, where if there's more than one of the same person in that existence, it just messes things up. So, after a little more reflection, his father tells him maybe he needs to look ahead instead of behind him. Lessons learned. And he goes back to the diner and now the diner that he went to at the beginning of the episode is modern. Everything is more modern. There's teenagers dancing there, some music. And he still has the limp. He tells a story to a younger kid behind the counter about how he got the limp when he was a child. And the man tells him the merry-go-round was condemned. And the episode ends with Serling's narration. And I think the main theme of this episode is just that you have to live in the present, not the past, but also that you can learn from the things that happened in the past, and you also need to take time out in your life to do the things that you really enjoy to do, and everything isn't just all business-like and stress all the time. And I think this is a good message. I really like Bernard Herrmann's score. The ending narration is effective. We didn't need the middle narration. This episode's a little over-narrated and a little over-dramatic, but because of all the things it did for the genre and its forward-thinking, I'm still going to give this episode a 4 out of 5. However, I do not think that this is quite an all-time Twilight Zone classic for the reasons that I pointed out, but it is a very good episode worth watching. That'll do it for Walking Distance. And if you like this series, you can click, comment, like, subscribe. Tell me what you thought of this episode yourself. Thanks for watching. Bye.